Timing is controlling the speed of an action through the number of frames used to represent that action. Timing is probably the most fundamental of the 12 principles since it gets at the essence of what makes animation and even film itself work in the first place. Animation is an optical illusion. If a series of images with slight variation are displayed fast enough, those changes in position are perceived by our brain as movement. The number of images and the rate at which they're shown determines their speed. The standard frame rate for film is 24 frames per second, and this is what most animators do their work at. So if you're working at 24 frames per second, and you want an action to take 1 second, it needs to be made up of 24 frames. And if you want it to take half a second, it would need to be 12 frames. Timing should not be confused with spacing, though they are related. Timing is the total number of frames that make up an action. Spacing refers to the amount of change between those frames, which also affects the speed of the object. See the video on the principle slow in and slow out to learn more about spacing and easing motion. The timing of an action is a big part of making it look clear, accurate, and realistic. But it also has a big effect on the personality behind an action. Look at how this hand presses this button. It seems pretty casual. But if we speed it up, it looks angry or panicky. And if we slow it down, it looks apprehensive or nervous. Keep in mind these animations all have the same key poses and easing. It's just the total number of frames that's changed. We can also play around with the timing within the motion. Currently, this press position comes about halfway through the motion. But if we shift it around so there's more frames before the press and fewer after, now this guy definitely seems scared. If you're working in 3D or with a digital 2D character rig, you're primarily thinking in terms of the actual time, since most of the frames are being generated for you by the computer. But if you're doing hand-drawn animation, you need to think about the number of drawings you'll need. Fortunately, even if you're working at 24 frames a second, you don't necessarily need to do 24 drawings to fill those 24 frames. That's because it's common to do hand-drawn animation on twos, which means holding each new drawing for 2 frames. So in that case, a second of an animation is only 12 drawings instead of 24. This generally looks fine, especially with slower motion. However, you might need to switch to animating on ones when things speed up, and there's a lot of difference between frames. You might need those extra drawings to smooth out the motion so it's clearer to the eye. It's easy to mix and match ones and twos, so just look out for any spots that might need an extra in-between frame. It's also typical for higher-end animation, like feature films, to be done entirely on ones, because it almost always looks better, especially when projected on a large screen. Here are some other principles closely related to timing. Feel free to jump to one of those, or just head to the next video. I'll see you there!